Welcome to Brave Healer Productions. It's time to experience what's possible. So, what if there's something you haven't learned yet that could change everything? Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Brave Story Time. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, and we're here today to help you experience what's possible. Brave Story Time is where our authors step up to share their wisdom from one of our expert collaborations. And today I am thrilled to have Jessica Thurston with me here today to do just that. We're going to be reading from Sacred Spaces. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, thank you for having me. Awesome to be here.
This is going to be so much fun, you guys. Let me tell you a little bit about Jessica. She is a creative entrepreneur who has taken her love for nature, people, and photography, turning her passions into a bouquet of different business ventures. She's the owner of the Farmology Stand, a roadside stand and certified nursery where she and her husband give away free organic produce from the small-scale farm. The two of them started together. Jessica is also the creator of Wild Essence Workshops, a summer nature program for kids. She's a master gardener where she volunteers in different local gardens. And Jessica is also a photographer specializing in a variety of different kinds of portraits. So as of this spring, she'll officially become an Airbnb host as well. Multi-potentialite over here. Their space will also be open to host gatherings and small retreats. And she does all of this while balancing being a wife, a mom, a stepmom, to a blended family of 4 daughters. Oh my gosh, Jessica. I can't wait to have you read this beautiful chapter to everyone. So I'm going to give them a little moment here. You guys, listeners, I want you to just settle in, take a deep breath. Jessica is going to read her chapter from Sacred Spaces, Subtle Shifts for Mind, Body, and Home Transformation. This is our volume 3 of this beautiful book by lead author Colleen Avis. And Jessica wrote chapter number 16. It's called Grow Through What You Go Through, an empowering journey of self-transformation. You're ready to roll, Jessica?
I'm ready as I'll ever be.
All right, it's all you.
All right, my story. Am I going to die like this? Is this really happening to me? Am I ever going to see my little girl again? These were the thoughts that raced through my mind as my neck was being straddled over a windowsill. My hands were forcefully held together behind my back with who was once my lover kneeling on top of me as I lay face down, almost suffocating in the pillows. No, that's not how my story is going to end. I had a long, beautiful, purposeful life ahead of me. This was not who I was or where I was supposed to be. God had a plan for me, and this was not it. I had a daughter who needed her mama, to love her, hold her hand, watch her grow, to guide and protect her. She needed me to be alive. The thought of her is what saved me. In that moment, my strength was ignited and survival mode kicked in. The feelings of fight or flight that I grew accustomed to were now fully fueled. His eyes were more than dilated from the drugs he was on. They were black, and I mean black, like I looked into the eyes of a demon. He was possessed, replaced by something dark and scary. Suddenly, his father, who he lived with, burst through the door. What the hell is going on in here? I practically jumped into his arms, begging for him to save me. I didn't have time to explain. I needed to escape. Naked and afraid, pushing my way down the stairs, I quickly grabbed the one boot I could find and ran out the door. In the midst of a snowstorm, I made the hour-and-a-half drive down State Route 79. I could barely see the road with all the tears that filled my eyes. It was the wee hours of the morning when I made it to the safety of my parents' driveway. Quietly, I walked up their creaky wooden staircase and headed for my bedroom. At the time, I thought I couldn't tell anyone what happened, so I curled up like a little girl with her blankie, hoping I'd wake up and this would all just be a bad dream. This unfortunately wasn't the first time I was a victim of abuse. I grew up witnessing alcoholism and domestic abuse in my own family as a child. God bless my mother, my earth angel. She did everything she could to try and make it so my little brother and I grew up feeling loved and supported. Still, I wandered off the path. After my father left us, I lived out the narrative of a little girl with deeply rooted daddy issues. I entered the world as a preteen without the love and support from my father, where questions of unworthiness and insecurities already existed. Not having that love and connection, I was left with a deep emotional void that sent me looking for love in all the wrong places. I spent most of my teen years into young adulthood, jumping from relationship to relationship, trying to band-aid the father-daughter wounds left unhealed. This was one of my most crucial and climatic times of my life, as well as the lowest. I was literally on the edge of death. I reached the point of my journey where it was time to choose once and for all. I could stumble my way back through the same dangerously dark path that led me here, or I could change the script completely. Finally, I could make the choice to stop retelling the same outdated narrative that no longer served me, yet ironically served a purpose. This wasn't going to be easy, though. Change is hard. Along the way, there would still be dark shadows, some of my own in which I'd have to face. I had to go through what I had to grow through. I find it fascinating how the topic of growth can relate to so many of life's greatest metaphors. There are lessons nature can teach us when we stop and be present with the wisdom it has to offer. Like a seed, I was planted in the darkness. Within me was a life force waiting to break free. I knew I had the potential to bloom into something beautiful. However, this type of transformation doesn't just happen. When a seed is sown, it remains dormant for a period of time. There, buried under the surface, in a suspended state, it waits until the conditions are met in order for it to not only begin to grow, but where it can survive. Internally, something profound must take place. For a seed to become a plant, it must first break open. It comes completely undone from the inside out. The shell dies off, and its roots must navigate their way through the darkness, anchoring into the earth. In that space is where the seedling gets its nourishment to support the growth that will occur. Then, almost like magic, the shoot emerges into the light, breaking free from the depth it was planted in. It's in those dark, painful phases of our lives when we feel like we're stuck and nothing's going to change that we're sitting in the sweet spot. It's where great transformation has the opportunity to take place. My heart was broken, my mind was opened, and it was time to start nourishing myself. So I headed down the path of healing. I was invited to attend a women's gathering, something I never did before. My Aunt Holly reassured me where we're going, there's no room for judgment. Instead, it was a place for connection. It was a community made up of a variety of women, all different ages, from all walks of life, who came together in a place where space was held to uplift one another. From the moment I walked into the candlelit room decorated with fresh flowers and feathers, I felt the warm, welcoming energy come over me like a blanket. The fragrance of white sage and braided lemongrass filled the air. We listened to the sounds of the handmade drums as we gathered in a circle, holding hands, coming together and song and dance. We laughed, we cried, we healed. Something sparked in me that day. I wanted more of whatever that scene was. So when's the next one? It was really from there that my Aunt Holly, my soaring hawk, took me under her wing and introduced me to the world of energy healing. It was in 2017 that I realized I reached some level of awakening. I started to become enlightened by philosophies and teachings about spirituality, energy work, and the mysteries of the universe. I was on what I call my quest for consciousness. I filled my head with the teachings from Dolores Cannon, Wayne Dyer, Alan Watts, Carl Jung, Joe Dispenza, and many more. I learned what I really needed to do was change my mindset. I was like a sponge, soaking up as much as I could about numerology, astrology, angels, spirit guides, and their universal messages, and somehow even started tapping into the realm of quantum physics. I got turned on to Abraham Hicks. At first, she seemed a little woo-woo, considering she's a woman channeling the non-physical collective consciousness with teachings about the law of attraction. But everything she said resonated throughout my whole being. It was like she was talking to me. I learned about the power of creation, and that's where my paradigm really started to shift. I learned that well-being is our natural state and how to use emotions as an internal guidance system that lets you know when you're in and out of alignment. How the contrast in life, the dark times, is what helps us create our preferences, thus launching rockets of desire out into the vortex. And the vortex is essentially a vibrational state of being where you're connected to source energy. When you're in the vortex, you're experiencing the kind of alignment that activates magic and miracles. It's where everything is always working out for you. You're in the right place at the right time. As soon as I woke up, I put on one of their morning rampages. At night, I fell asleep listening to their guided meditations. All throughout the day, I played them in my headphones while I was at work and in the car, wherever I drove. I couldn't get enough. Every day, I woke up feeling exhilarated to see how my day would deliciously unfold. I learned what it meant to be the creator of your reality and about the power of manifestation and positive thinking. I started to focus on being aware of the way I felt, what was raising my frequency, and who would lower it. I became more enlightened and more empowered. I learned I needed to stop seeking the approval of others. I went my whole life thinking I wasn't enough, but the fact was, to some people, I'd never be good enough. I was never going to fit in the box that they desperately held open for me. I had a hard time trying to convince those around me that was right for them wasn't necessarily right for me. You must believe in yourself, and for God's sakes, start loving yourself. You have to get yourself ready to be ready for what the universe has in store for you. You have to put yourself in a place of power where you understand that you can break the chains that keep you stuck in the loop of attracting everything you don't want and start deliberately attracting what you do. It takes work every day. The journey of awakening isn't always easy. It's not all sunshine, butterflies, and rainbows. It can get ugly. It's facing yourself in the mirror and looking at the parts you don't like to look at. I learned that the things that triggered me about others was actually my own emotional response trying to show me where I needed work. As I began to make the shift into seeking greater awareness, I started to see how the world around me was reflecting the energy I projected. I became more mindful of the words I spoke and the stories I told, not only to others, but most importantly, myself. The phrase, where the focus goes, energy flows, became one of my mantras. I learned to give myself grace because our imperfections are how we learn and grow. There is no such thing as failure, only what can I do differently next time. It felt like I was playing with infinite intelligence, like I was dancing around the tip of the divine creator's paintbrush, witnessing the grand orchestration of how everything was connected in that moment. I was rendezvousing with the universe. Somehow my thoughts started appearing in my physical reality. I'd be thinking something to myself, and there it was on Instagram, billboards, and the random radio stations I turned on when I got in my car. And it aligned perfectly with whatever I was just thinking. Numbers started to become a part of my life. 111, 222, 333, even ones like 37, 27, and 79. I filled up about 8 different journals in just a couple of months, scribbling down every synchronicity that appeared, every repetitive number. The same animals kept crossing my path, each repeating symbol. I tapped into something. It's what I called my magic. I was swirling in all the energy around me. An incredible life force flowed throughout my body. I felt like a butterfly finally coming out of its cocoon, fluttering everywhere. I had to find a way to anchor myself into this new reality. I needed grounding. That's when the stars really aligned. I rented out a storage unit that I turned into my studio space. It held all of my collections, supplies, and frames. I had electricity put in with some comfy chairs, and it even used it as a space to meditate. As funny as it sounds, it was one of my sacred spaces. I posted a clip of my new space on Facebook. That's when Daniel appeared in my inbox. I'm looking for an interior designer and found you through a random mutual friend. I saw your recent post with all your frames. Would you be interested in coming down to do something with my daughter's artwork? He was recently divorced and left with pretty much nothing to decorate the walls with other than swords and army flags. Being a dad of 3 girls, this wasn't going to fly for too long. He needed a woman's touch. I had never interior designed a day in my life, but I've always been the entrepreneur type, so I accepted the challenge. Okay, sure. What's your address? State Route 79. I spit out my drink. I didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. This time I was guided toward the other end of Route 79. I didn't believe in coincidences anymore. I believed in something much bigger. He opened the door. There was a presence about him. He radiated goodness. To my surprise, he prepared a charcuterie board with fancy cheeses, nuts, and fresh veggies. The floor was covered in his children's artwork. We spent hours talking about our kids and our lives, vibing over the fact that we'd both been on a journey of self-love and healing. Do you want to go for a walk? He asked. As we strolled through the acres of pine trees and fields of gold, he asked, can I hold your hand? He was the first man to ever ask to hold my hand, and it was from then on that he'd be the last. Ever since that day, Daniel has been an unconditional source of nourishment. He supports and encourages all my dreams and has given me the space to bloom. 7 years ago, a divine union was formed and a mission was planted in each of our hearts. Together, we shared a vision. So we started a farm, opened a farm stand, and began building an Airbnb. Tending to the land has been a healing journey on its own. It gives me that feeling of being a part of something much greater than myself. Being out in my gardens, hands in the dirt, wind in my hair, with the sun that sparkles in my eyelashes, grounds me. Now I wake up and step out on my front porch, looking out at everything we've created, and I ask myself, is this really happening to me? The practice. It was my intention that throughout my story, you'd pick up on some of the tools that helped me on my journey. I don't have one specific practice to focus on, but rather a culmination of wisdom that I've learned along the way. I hope you find something that resonates. Cultivate a growth mentality. You are an extension of source energy. Within you is a life force with the power to bring the non-physical, your thoughts, into the physical, your reality. If you can consciously start to choose better feeling thoughts, you'll start to feel better. Think of what the highest version of yourself looks like. What are they doing? How are they acting? What choices are they making? Then start to adapt those things into your current reality. Watch how it shifts. Plant yourself among companions. Find yourself a community that benefits your life in some way. People who lift you up instead of bringing you down. People who encourage your growth and want to see you bloom. Deepen your roots in divinity. Call it God, source energy, creator. To me, it's all one and the same. I think we can mostly agree that there is some type of higher power orchestrating that this crazy, beautiful thing called life. In a way, this chapter is a testimony of the miracles and the magic God has worked for me. Spirit has a way of working through many channels. You just have to open the door and have some faith. I feel that connecting with Source on a regular basis can be as simple as time spent out in nature, appreciating all God's beauty, being still, listening to the whispers of the wind. Believe it or not, some of the biggest revelations come when I'm alone in my car, where I sit in silence, being present with my thoughts. Every day I seek God's guidance, I give praise, and I surrender to the things that are out of my control. I pray that Spirit uses me as an instrument to help and serve others. Trust the divine plan God has for you. Pull the weeds and deadhead your flowers. Give yourself room to grow. Reevaluate your inner landscape. What is taking up space in your mind that isn't serving you? Start to weed out the things, the people, the thoughts that are using up all of your precious energy. Make way for new growth. And lastly, find your wanderlust. When was the last time you went on an adventure? Somewhere you didn't know the exact destination and you let your heart be your guide. Whenever I feel like I'm stuck in a rut, just going through the motions, or if I'm aware that I've been in one of those moods where my energy, my negative energy is rubbing off on everyone, that's my cue that I need to go. Sometimes we just need to get away from it all, somewhere new, where we can gain a fresh perspective. Let yourself be led by your intuition on what way to go. Whether it's a solo road trip in the mountains, somewhere by the water where you can sit and reflect, or find a local park and let yourself wander down a path. You never know what you'll end up finding along the way.
The end of the chapter. Oh, it's such a treat to be read to. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
So, you wrote about some pretty significant trauma. How was that writing that opener to that chapter? Like, how was that for you?
Well, it was like ripping off the scab of an old wound, and it's not all the way healed yet, so it still hurts. And it a little bit, it felt like a little bit of that yucky feeling in the bottom of your belly, but having to work through that made me feel like, I'm sorry, that's a tough question where I was in that, the telling of that story. Am I going to die like this? Right. I put myself in the situation where I was, and I felt like there's a greater audience that I needed to speak to who are in the situation. There's so many cases where there's women out there that are in the same space. And I knew that if I could just get that out, and that could be a place for others to come and see that they're not alone, and look at what can happen if you can be brave and use your words and come out and talk about something that is so hard.
Well, thank you, because that's exactly as I listened. It's one thing to read your all your chapters, like I'm reading everything, but when an author steps up to verbalize it, like to read it, and you put your vibration of your voice to the words, they come alive at another level. And I just thought to myself, wow, she is brave, and this is what I want to publish. Like, I can feel that purpose and mission that you just stated behind what you did there. And really, for me, it's just gratitude. Thank you for being brave enough to do it, and knowing that purpose behind it. That's really important.
I
That's,
thank you.
yeah,
For a
of
long
course.
time, the craziest thing about it, sorry to interrupt, the craziest thing about it is, for a long time, there were years before I even felt like I could tell anyone. So, and there was only a select, like maybe one or two people, and that wasn't even the full story, because I felt like I said, that I couldn't say anything to anyone. I was like ashamed that I was even, as a mother, in a situation like that. Did I get myself in that situation? So I kept that to myself. And then all of a sudden, being able to go from that of not telling anyone to be able to come out and share it and speak up and say, you know what, enough is enough, because I've seen so many other women, like I'm saying, dealing with, unfortunately, situations like this. And it just felt like the right time to use my voice.
Definitely the right time. So let's jump a little bit to the juicy goodness of the law of attraction and the nature connection. I want to talk about that first. Nature's lessons. I loved that as your subject throughout. And of course, here you are on the other side of things, running a farm and a farm stand, and you're like hands in the dirt. Um, that thing about breaking free from darkness, like, if our listeners are in the dark right now, they're in that messy, awful, dark place. You're giving them some hope in that way, talking about it. What do you want them to know? What's the most important thing?
When you're in that darkness, I know that it feels like there's some things that can't even help. And no matter what, all the advice in the world might not feel like it works, but that there is light at the end of the tunnel, even as cliche as that sounds. And you got to dig through that darkness, and you just got to know that you can break free from it. And as hard as it may feel to get unstuck, there's always some type of support or people or even online videos that can help you get out of that. But I think the most powerful tool is yourself. You got to be ready to do the work.
Yeah, whether you really know what it is yet or not. And
Right.
I read or listened to it in your chapter. You were open enough to receive that invitation from your friend to go to the group. You were
Yes.
open enough. You were aware. You were ready to receive, and you were like, "Okay, I'm paying attention. Yes, I think I'll go." Right, and that's, I think, one of the tricks.
Mm-hmm. Right. When you're in a place where nothing else is working, and then you go and it opens you when you feel like you're at that space of rock bottom. And that's where I reached out, and really, it was really rough patch. Like it didn't just go from darkness to light. Like it took a lot of that crying and you know, I'm not, it's hard to put into words what had to happen before I could say yes to that invitation. I guess what I want to say is that right away, it doesn't just happen, that it's a practice,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yes, I think part of it was allowing and giving yourself permission to feel the grief. I think that's first step, is allowing yourself to feel everything, and then staying open to what's around you, the messages. I loved all your synchronicities. I don't want to skip over the fact that we've got some of the same spiritual teachers. You mentioned Wayne Dyer, Joe Dispenza, Esther Hicks. Oh my gosh! So this morning, while I was on the foam roller listening to Esther Hicks in my head on my phone, right? Like I love that so much. And you took us through some of these steps in your practice that I also loved. Having a growth mentality is a big one for me. Also, I call it learner's mindset or beginner's mindset. Like, what was important about that for you? Can you give us an example?
Well, it's funny, the beginner's mindset, because my original beginner mindset when I first started, like let's say the farm, right? And the nature program and all of that together, and the build of the Airbnb, it all kind of happened in the first year. So in the first year as a beginner, I thought that I could have a lavender garden planted, a sunflower field planted, like the all of these things. I had no idea the actual work that it took, that it was going to take, and the time. And beginning something, I think I was on the verge of, like, I laugh and tell people sometimes, like I'm on the verge of millennial, where things we ever, like, unfortunately, where we think everything comes like this, right? And so that beginner mindset, I thought it could all just happen. And then I was learning while I'm out there, I didn't have my plants in the right place. I wasn't watering them enough. There was all these different random things that started happening, or time with, again, 4 girls, like we talked about, that I have, the time that it takes to do all. I don't know what I was thinking in my beginner mindset, but what is the most beautiful part of that, I think, that I learned from that beginner mindset, and my mom is a huge help for this, is that the reminder that it's progress over perfection, and that any little step that you take even if it's the smallest thing, that it, if you're doing one thing every day, that's a small step, it really does equal to that great big picture, that vision that you have. So that's that.
I love it. Um, I was making some notes on those steps, your companions, deepening your roots. I wrote down the word faith there. The weeds, especially, I kind of want to skip to the thing about the weeds because I've experienced something lately where I realized if I didn't weed, there was no literal room for me, body, mind, soul, spirit, to
Mhm.
grow. So when I heard that line when you were reading it, and I'm like, oh, it was like palpable to me.
Yes.
Make space,
Mhm.
right? So what were you doing when you were making space for you to grow?
It started with the mental space. What I was doing, it started with those thoughts that I was thinking. How many times, really, when I'm looking at my thoughts per day, how many times am I having those negative thoughts, those defeating thoughts, those thoughts that don't serve me? They're not doing any good other than taking up that space. Versus when I learned to, with Abraham Hicks was the starter. If you can sit there for 17 seconds and think about something else, how that 17 seconds can help grow and manifest into, like, from that non-physical, like we're saying, of an idea to a physical. So at first it was the mental space that I had to clean up. Um, and then I think I just needed to make space in my day. I needed to actually look at how much time a day am I spending doing something useless like scrolling the phone, or even, it's important to have your house clean, but even scrubbing the dishes. Like, can I set these dishes down for a minute and can I go meditate for 10 minutes instead of scrubbing dishes, just to get myself in a place if I need it in the day? So it was making space mentally and in a time manner when it comes to the beginning of that question.
I love it. I have been purposefully curating more space in all the ways you're talking about and feeling, again, just a very palpable feeling of relief. This subject, the law of attraction and Esther Hicks, I could sit here for the next 3 hours and
Ever.
book club that with you. It's so phenomenal, right? It's such a game changer. But
Yes.
you said a few things in your chapter about what it takes, and it takes a daily commitment, sometimes an hourly commitment, so that
Mm-hmm.
you are really focusing where you want to be aligned. For me, it's like, does this align with joy today? No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe I could weed that out today, right?
Right. Or the constant going back to it. Like, there's days where you can spend your hour in the meditate, like all of that. But I also like find when you can check yourself too throughout the day. So it can take that whole hour just to get you into your like vortex or into your space of alignment. And then once you're there, like throughout the day, you might have a bumper here or there, and then you got to get yourself back into that. Okay, I like the when you focus on the first positive thought, like what brings you into something other than like the space you're trying to get out of, like washing your hands with warm water is one of my favorite. Instant happiness actually can just like shift it. It's the funniest thing. I did want to go back to one thing because I think it's important when it came to the making space in nature and how beautiful it all is, and something that I learned of the way of the land by tilling my own farm out here. So we, in the beginning of all of this, we live on five acres, and there was dead pine trees on 4 of those acres. Dead, yucky looking, all the things. They just needed to go. So we hired someone, we got them all down, we were cleaning up everything. And the first year, it looked just like naked and just like dead, like there's just brown out in the field. But after the next year or two, now where that was that dead field is now a field full of beautiful wildflowers.
Mm.
And I love to think about how when you shed that skin and you get out of, and you got to get it all up because you don't know the beauty that's under that. So I just loved that. And I thought that was important to say.
Yes, another really wonderful way to think about your own soul. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're not weeding and deadheading, it's all suffocating
Mm-hmm.
and it can't come up in all its glory, right? The field of wildflowers. Oh, you gave me such a beautiful visual just now. Uh,
Good.
well, okay. Speaking of the farm and all of the things you're up to, I was just like reading your bio going, holy moly, she is a busy gal. Share with everyone, what are you up to? Where do people find you? What's going on with your Airbnb? Tell us everything.
This is divine timing to be able to share this with everybody right now. We are going to be opening our Airbnb in the end of May this year. So that's something we've been working on for a couple years now. The build of that, it's going to be like a rustic glamping thing out in the woods. We built a huge pavilion and have the canvas style tent and built an outhouse that's more beautiful than my bathroom here and home. And so that's really exciting. The Farmology Stand is our farm stand there. We give away free organic food to our local community, and it's really awesome because community really has been stepping up over the last couple of years. We started like 3 years ago, and since then, it's really awesome how people come and step up, and elderly ladies will crochet us doilies, and people will make homemade cards and they'll donate them for the stand to have for other people to pick up. And it's just been a really fun thing. People who have like an abundance from their garden, they'll come, and that we have the give, take, swap thing. So they'll give what they have and then swap out for what they don't have. So just a really cool thing. And then we have my Wild Essence nature program. So I'm working on that calendar right now for the summer season. It's a nature program with kids, get them outside. I like to say unplug and recharge, these days with kids. I heard that a long time ago somewhere and it just stuck, especially having kids of my own, how much they're connected to their phone, and being able to give them the environment to have their senses ignited by nature and a place to play is a big one for me. So that's going to be starting back up. And those are the really big things.
And I'm not sure if we said where you are.
Oh, well, here's the funny thing. I'm in the boons of a small town called Windsor, New York, and that's outside of Binghamton. So about 20 minutes. But it's out there, and we're right along the Susquehanna River. So that's awesome for the Airbnb. You can see like right through the woods down there. It's awesome for kayaking and that type of
Beautiful.
thing.
Yes, yes, yes. So, you guys don't worry. I got her all hooked up down below. So, if you're listening to this and all the things, maybe you're in this area, you want to go check it out. The websites and the social links are all below here in the video description.
I do
Just
want to mention one more thing that is important. I'm sorry to interrupt because I'm
okay.
sitting here thinking the last thing is that we're opening up the space. It's not just those things. We're opening up the space. We're calling out to anyone who feels called or wants to share their gifts with others as a retreat type space. That's one of the biggest things that with having to keep track of so many, I forgot about one of the biggest ones. So anyone who feels called to be hosting gatherings like those women's retreats that I'm talking about is also a thing that we're starting this year. So the calendar will be on the farmologystand.org website.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you guys are running retreats, event planning, hook up with Jessica and ask her about her beautiful space. It sounds totally amazing. All right, let's just wrap up today with any last words you have. Maybe listeners here today. There's a lot of people in a lot of overwhelm. There's a lot going on in the world. If somebody's sort of on the journey, but they're a little overwhelmed and they don't know where to start, what would your advice be for them today?
That your journey is your own and you can't compare it to others. And you got to remember, I feel like just that it's okay to be in your own lane, and it's not, the journey is not a race, and to start where you are, to start to take joy in the little things and be open to synchronicities and the possibilities.
Beautiful. Jessica, thank you so much for what you do in the world and for being here today to share it with everyone.
Well, thank you so much for having me and having me in sacred spaces. This was a whole journey in itself. So thank you.
It was. We can shout Colleen out for being such an incredible leader of this expert collaboration. Jessica was one of her co-authors with this beautiful chapter today, you guys. So we hope that you go pick up the book on Amazon and all the things. And come back for more of our Brave Storytime sessions. We love reading the chapters and just getting to know our authors like this. It's a community more than anything. These are way more than just a book. People like Jessica are part of a generous community that is there for you. If you have a question or want to carry on the conversation, need some support, again, drop down into the show notes and click on the links and explore all of Jessica's amazing offerings. And remember today, lastly, you guys, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone.
Thank you.